everyone. Welcome to the Sega Wow Show, dedicated to celebrating and promoting female leadership in sport. And I'm thrilled to be at the MasterCard Tech Hub in New York on International Women's Day. And I'm delighted to share a conversation I had with a pioneer in women in sports. Her name's Debbie Hewitt, and she is the first elected chair of the FA in its history.
Thank you so much for inviting me here to participate in the Sega Summit on Female Leadership in Sport. For me, it's both an honour and a privilege to be asked to contribute, and specifically to briefly share my journey as a business leader, the lessons I've learned along the way, and more recently, on my experience in sport. As a kid growing up in the north of England in the early 1960s, I had the unusual, but now I realise invaluable experience of having a mother who worked full time. Whilst all the other kids at my school typically had a mum at home and a dad at work, my mum went back to work as Inspector of Taxes almost immediately after I was born. And so it was that I had my very own role model of a successful working woman, except at the time, it was something that often made me feel decidedly odd amongst my peers, rather than lucky. Fast forward to my teenage years, and there was no doubt that my mum's experience as a working woman had influenced me, probably subtly at the time, to believe that any opportunity was open to a woman. And it's now no surprise, as I look back on my career, to find that I often took on roles that were not, shall we say, the norm for women. But to me, having a role model that told me otherwise, impossible became nothing. In the early days of my career, I was obsessed with business and the financing of business. And that curiosity drove me to explore careers in commerce. My first role as a store management trainee with the retailer Marks & Spencer gave me a tremendous grounding in customer service and the crucial value of an organisation that looked after its people. The importance of being customer focused is even more valid today than it was then, given that customers have so much more choice, but even more so, the lesson that the engagement of your people is one of the biggest differentiators of the success of any organisation. Winning the hearts and minds of your people in good times and not so good times is what, for me, often separates exceptional and average business leaders. A change of direction into the car industry with a company called Lex in the early 1980s saw me face some of my biggest business challenges. I learned how to read a P&L and a balance sheet, or rather I was forced to learn after I made some fundamentally poor decisions that showed I didn't really understand the difference between cash and profit. During that time, I had a boss who promoted me into a role which I arguably did not have the experience for. And although not easy initially, it was his support and mentorship that not only ensured I survived, but thrived. Another great lesson. As a business leader, I think it's our role not only to take a risk on people we see as having talent and potential, but to support, coach, and mentor them when we give them that opportunity. There's no doubt in my mind that without his mentorship, I would never have succeeded in building the business career I have today, which reinforces exactly why the Sega Women Global Mentorship Programme is an important initiative to support the development of women in sports leadership. My executive career culminated in me becoming the CEO of a listed business called RAC, a motoring service business that fixes broken down cars at the roadside, one that employed over 8,000 people, mainly men as it happens. I was the first female CEO of that business in its 125-year history, but no one talked about that in the 1990s. All that mattered was I had a vision as to how to grow the business. I communicated that vision, and then I did everything that I could to ensure that it got delivered. Now, RAC is a business that never closes. Cars break down at all times of the day and night. And I learned how crucial it was as a business leader to understand the importance of the organisation's culture. It was a large and complex business, but the fundamentals of that business were simple. Most of our patrols worked at the roadside alone and often had to make decisions on their own. It became very clear to me very quickly that they needed to be empowered to do that. And as the leader of that business, my job was largely about finding the things that got in the way of them delivering good service and then eliminating them. My time at RAC ended when we sold the business, and that's when my plural non-executive career beckoned. The opportunity to build a portfolio of roles in different sectors. Since building my portfolio, I've had 18 non-exec roles in 11 different sectors, and they've included growth stories, turnarounds, startups, regulated businesses, mergers and acquisitions, and I've had experience in listed businesses, private equity and privately owned business, and indeed with government entities, where I've chaired the businesses and also its various committees, including remuneration, risk, audit, and cyber committees. I'm currently the chair of 4 businesses: Visa Europe, Compare the Market, White Stuff, and the Football Association. Quite different businesses in their own way, but with some fundamental similarities that have been poignant to my experience as a business leader, irrespective of my role, my gender, or indeed of the sector. First and foremost, business leaders need a vision of what they want to achieve. I think of it as the legacy you want to leave behind. For every role that I've done, I've set out that within the first few weeks of joining. Secondly, you need to be able to communicate that clearly, to persuade, inspire, and to motivate. Then you need to have the inner confidence to make decisions and to take the tough calls along the way. And finally, you need resilience. It won't all go right, and it's how you respond that can often make the difference between your success or indeed otherwise as a leader. Now, several people have asked me why I decided to take up a role chairing a sporting organisation rather than another business, and how is it different? Well, my introduction and interest in the beautiful game of football came through my dad, who was an amateur referee. Aged 10 years old, I can remember wondering why so many people had asked me if my dad needed a new pair of specs, especially as he didn't need glasses. By the time I was 12, I was occasionally his stand-in assistant referee, or linesman as it was called in those days, I'm sure breaking every rule in the book, when there was simply no one else around the pitch and the game would not go ahead unless I held that flag and ran up and down the pitch as though my life depended on it. I loved that opportunity. I was lucky. I could run fast and I loved football. And hopefully most people thought I was a boy, as I had short cropped hair, deliberately kept short so no one would guess that I was a girl, and that a girl indeed was their assistant referee. A kid was no problem, but a girl in those days was. Of course, the teams were right in suggesting that I did need a new pair of specs, as my knowledge of the football rules hadn't quite reached the dizzy heights of my dad's. But by the time I was 15, I knew the rules, having badgered my dad to sit down and patiently explain them whenever we had time, usually using the salt, pepper, vinegar, and sauce bottles as player substitutes. It also helped that my dad took me to see many, many football matches, to see his beloved Notts County, although my allegiance was always to the first team that I saw beat them 4-0, Liverpool. Fast forward almost 45 years, and I find myself with the privilege of joining the FA. So my interest in the game was a significant attraction for me joining and doing this job. But as importantly, I was joining at a time of opportunity to bring about positive change across this game. The power of football is unique. It's the world's biggest sport with over 3.5 billion fans. It's an opportunity to be a force for good in society. And arguably, the opportunity in football is unique. The opportunity to lead the board of one of the biggest and oldest football associations in the world was an opportunity that I relished. I never really thought about being the first woman in its 160-year history. I thought about the experience I bring, the opportunity it gave me to shape the future, and the personal development that I could get along the way. It was only when the appointment was announced and I saw the reaction that I realised the significance of being a woman and the extent to which I might inspire other young girls. So far, I would say there have been many more similarities than difference in this role compared to my business roles, as both have complex stakeholder environments, both focus on performance, both have a need for clear commercial strategies, and both need strong governance, and fundamentally, both about managing, leading, and inspiring people. Business and sport have a strong need for a strong vision that engages all of those people involved, particularly the need to engage those who are in the front line. And in football, that means everyone in grassroots football, including the 28,000 active referees supporting our 100,000 plus affiliated teams up and down the country, from the grassroots to the professional game. The need also to bring good governance to our board, something I'm particularly proud of as I look at the early progress we've made at the English FA, particularly bringing a former footballer onto our board, Joby McAnuff, who is making an exceptional contribution. Whether in business or in sport, it's essential to have a healthy culture where inclusive leadership can thrive. Football administration already has some strong female leaders. Alison Britton at the Premier League, Baroness Sue Campbell, our own Director of Women's Football, Fatma Sumara, FIFA's General Secretary, Nadine Kessler, UEFA's Head of Women's Football, Heike Ulrich, General Secretary of the German Football Federation, Lise Glavnes, President of the Norway FA, Vanda Sigurðardóttir, President of the Icelandic FA, Laura McAllister, Chair of the Welsh Sports Hall of Fame, to name just a few. At the English FA, we have 4 women on our board, and we have a significant proportion of our executive leadership team who are women. These successful women show the benefits of inclusive leadership, reflecting their different experiences and perspective, and their diversity of thought, which comes, in my view, from their experience as leaders, not from their gender. Like the customers and employees of the businesses that I chair, football has a very diverse fan base, a very diverse playing base, and the leadership of the game needs to reflect those who play, coach, watch, and support the game. There is still much to do in this area, and I hope my legacy will show that I leave behind an organisation that has made substantial progress in providing equal opportunities to all talented individuals, both off and on the field. I think the differences between my business role and my role in sport can be summed up by concluding that the highs in sport are often higher and the lows are often lower. The power of sport can be a force for good and can drive very positive change in society, which is why the highs are often more profound and impact so many more people. But equally, the responsibility when things go wrong is often more acute and so much more public. But it is these extremes that make this a job I love doing, always a privilege and very occasionally a burden. Now, as you've probably heard from my story today, a hungry to learn has been a constant theme in my life and my career. I've often attended conferences like these, hearing about the career of a business person who seemingly described a perfect journey. And I appreciate that, like the airbrushing of a photo by a fancy camera, careers and indeed life is never as perfect as I've made my story sound. Because what you've heard today is a significant edit of the full story. I've missed the times I received the "sorry, you've not been successful" letter, the times I missed out on that promotion, the times I've made a poor decision and I've learned that failure really is an orphan, and indeed the times I've read the column inches of the journalists that narrated my failure, sometimes before I've fallen over, and fall over I have, and frequently. But if there's one piece of advice that I wished I could have given my younger self, it would be that my attitude to the tough times that I face will be a critical factor in determining just how successful I can be as a leader. For the tough times, we often believe that being brave means feeling no fear. I'd say to you, very, very few people fear no fear. For the rest of us, with empathy and a pulse, we're going to feel it. Being brave is about feeling the fear and choosing to have a go anyway. And your attitude to times of success, well, make sure that you savour the moment. I have a theory that if we each knew we will only get a maximum of 100 perfect moments in life, we'd look out for them and we'd savour them. As it is, we're often so busy on the journey that we forget to pause, to celebrate, and to savour the moment. I mean, deeply savour the moment. It remains for me to commend SIGA for its efforts to promote good governance, sports integrity, and greater gender equality in sport, and to hope that you all enjoy the conference. I'm going to leave you with one thought and a prediction. My thought to those of you who enjoyed and were inspired by the Lionesses Euros, I know that it will provide the opportunity to inspire the next generation of women girls to fall in love with football on and off the field. And my prediction, many of the next generation of female football leaders will emerge from that magical summer of 2022. Thank you.
The first game when we stepped out at Old Trafford was just something else.
Can this team deliver?
Is this the moment? Beth Mead blows the roof off Old Trafford!
Hopefully one day we look back and it won't just have been playing football, we'll have done something bigger.
One of the things we really wanted to do was inspire the nation.
Game 2 for England. White to make it 3! And she does! They are strolling into the quarterfinals.
I think the biggest thing that Serena said to us at the start was play for the little girl that wanted to be in our shoes, play for her.
Oh, Kirby! England march into the quarterfinals in frightening form.
The buzz around the country is massive.
In the women's game we wanted to take it to another level.
We want to work really hard, but we want to enjoy it along the way.
If it stays as it is, we will be going to penalties.
Georgia Stanway goes for goal! Oh my word! England through to the semi-finals of Euro 2022!
It's incredible. I think the fans have been brilliant.
We've not crumbled once and we don't intend to, because it's just about enjoying it as much as possible.
To have them home fans behind you, we want to win for them.
France keeps it going. She's done it again! Rousseau! Wow! What was that? England will get their shot at glory.
You can't help but dare to dream a little bit.
England versus Germany, Euro final, Wembley Stadium.
Oh, and the tune is through here, and the tune for England! Oh, yes! What a goal! It's in! Chloe Kelly! It's all over! England, European champions!
The legacy of the tournament was already made before that final game. What we've done for women and young girls that can look up and aspire to be us, we've changed the game.
Debbie participated in the SIGA Summit on Female Leadership in Sport yesterday. And I'm delighted to share her full keynote, as we were only able to play a portion of it during the live event. You will see the inspiring words she delivers to young women all around the world, and also to rally the male champions around us.
Debbie, thank you for joining us and supporting the SIGA Women Programme in 2023 to promote and celebrate female leaders in sport. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to speak to you today. And I'm going to kick off by asking you, plain and simple, how have you found life at the FA's first female chair 1 year on?
Yeah, 1 year on. My goodness, what a role. It's been every emotion you can possibly think of. Very exciting role. I find it very stimulating. I'm somebody who is a curious person, so I've learnt so much in the year. I've had so many enjoyable moments. A big highlight would be the Disability Cup weekend, seeing so many people have a whole new lease of life as a result of football. was just so inspiring. And I've been to so many crucial games. I saw the Lionesses lift that trophy. I saw our men do well in the Men's World Cup. What's not to like? It's been an absolute blast.
Oh, fantastic. And for me, and you mentioned it during your keynote for the SIGA Summit on Female Leadership in Sport, the magical summer you referred to, the atmosphere for England, for the women's football, was absolutely electric. Following the Women's Euros win, what's the plan for the trajectory of women's football in England?
It was a very successful summer, and not just we got to lift the trophy, but if you think about what's happened subsequently, each of our players getting recognition and awards, Serena getting Coach of the Year, Beth Mead winning Sports Personality, the team winning the Team of the Year. They've just been, amazing. They've wiped the board at every award ceremony, which has been phenomenal. We've seen audiences increase. And the interest in women and girls football literally gone through the roof. But that legacy started way before the tournament actually happened. And certainly, our teams at the FA put in place a legacy plan well before the tournament, which was very much focused around increasing the opportunity for women and girls to have access to football. And one of the big challenges that we've had in our country is the fact of getting that access. It's been limited, and what the legacy plan has done is given everybody, irrespective of where they live, irrespective of the means that they have, access. And that legacy program has now started to become a reality. We launched just a couple of weeks ago our Women and Girls Pathway, which we fundamentally built on making sure that if a girl or a woman has interest in football, they have the opportunity to play.
So you touched on important words like legacy, access for all, and it's just fantastic to hear the trajectory of women's football on the pitch. Off the pitch, how can we get more women into senior global football leadership roles, such as in FIFA and UEFA?
I think actually FIFA and UEFA are doing quite a lot, and there are some pretty senior women in those roles. I mentioned a couple of them actually in my keynote speech. You see Fatma, the General Secretary of FIFA, you see Nadine Kessler leading up women's football. And actually across football in its entirety, you see people, Alison Britton is the chair of, arguably one of the most successful leagues. So I think we have those role models. And we have role models across the game in coaching. We've mentioned Serena, Emma Hayes in Chelsea, in refereeing. And I think once females can see that there's role model, that somebody has actually been there, you've got to, to be it, you've got to see it. I think what it does is it inspires the desire because it shows that it's possible. And I think, making it easy and making it encouraging and putting in programs like mentoring, this program, it means that if you've got the desire to do it, you see that it can be done, and then you've got the support network to help you get there, then you're more likely to start that journey. And then I think it's particularly important, I talked about fear of failure. Often, that prevents or it inhibits anybody from trying to break through what they perceive to be a difficult journey. Making sure that there's the infrastructure there if we do fall over, so that we get up and give it another go. All of those things make a difference. And I do think that institutions like FIFA and UEFA are increasingly more aware of the programs to put in place to provide those opportunities and to provide that support network.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, having those role models at the top is important, and then creating the pathways. And really glad that you mentioned the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Program. And in fact, my mentee this year is from the FA, which is brilliant, and it just shows how wide-ranging this global network is. We are currently have 50 young women from 32 countries around the world, from all different backgrounds, some at sports governing bodies like the FA and others, money in tennis. But it's just a fantastic network, and I would say that the mentors learn just as much from the mentees as well. So that is a really good crossover in terms of synergies and learning, and also creating that network and support network of other women in the industry that can create greater pathways and greater opportunities. On the subject of football governance, how important is integrity, both on and off the field? And, what do you take from, the business world in how you chair the FA in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, integrity is crucial, and an interesting word. What do we mean by integrity? For me, integrity is the core values that you hold, the core values and principle about the way you do things, and probably more importantly, how you do things when no one's watching, as opposed to when the world is watching, and how consistent you are in applying those values and principles to everything you do. And as a leader, very often it's not what we say, it's actually what we do. And I think that's often how integrity gets measured. And fundamentally for me, that forms the basis of the way that I chair businesses. And I think particularly, as the governance of football, I mean, the FA's role is to be the governance of football. Integrity has to be the backbone of everything that we do, that consistency of behaviour. And I think, as I think about football, as I said in my keynote speech, there really isn't that much difference between football and business. Everybody wants to come to work to do, in my view, a good job. It's our role as business leaders or as sport leaders to create the environment that help them to thrive and to do that good work. And that often gets exemplified in the culture of the organisation which you lead. It's a privilege as a leader of a big sports organisation like the FA. But with it comes that responsibility, and indeed the responsibility to ensure that the culture consistently shows the integrity that you've referred to. And, we're held to account for that very publicly.
You mentioned about integrity and culture and also, the importance of your actions. We've got a lot of young female leaders in the sports industry tuning in to watch this. What is your message to the next generation of female leaders in sport?
Well, I think some of the lessons, take some of the lessons from the things I got wrong, probably. It's that sense of really being clear, being hungry to learn, I think probably would be the first one. Putting yourself out there to go into any situation, you're always going to face new things, and going into them with an open mind that you are hungry to learn, I think is crucially important. That's something that I learned very early on in my career, that knowing the things that you don't know and being hungry enough to find out about them. I think secondly, the support and the network that you've talked about, you can't do it on your own. You need someone who's a sounding board. You definitely need someone who can help you build that resilience, such that when things do go wrong, which they do from time to time, they help you find that inner confidence to stick at it. And then I think that feel the fear and do it anyway. Very often we probably spend most of our time regretting not giving it a go. And I think as any person coming into a new sector, a new job, trust yourself, trust your inner voice, that you can give something a go, and you'll always learn more from giving it a go than you will, having the regret of not doing it.
So many fantastic tips. I think we've got at least 5 or 6 there, and I'm sure that all of the young SEGA women mentees will be avidly taking note, and hopefully having the courage, as you said, to try something new, and also not be afraid to know your own boundaries and the things that you don't know. How do we encourage more former players and coaches to aim for and secure leadership roles in football?
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about role models, and that's important. And I think also it's incumbent upon us as business leaders to take risk. I mean, I talked in my keynote speech about somebody that took a risk on me. I think, you know, one of the most privileged roles we have as a leader is when we recruit people, or when we appoint people into new roles. And if we always do the same old, you know, we never really change the face of what it is that we're doing. And I think taking a risk on people who maybe haven't got the full experience, maybe people who haven't been in those situations before, but who have a set of qualities, who show that hunger to learn that I've talked about, and who will bring a different kind of thinking around the teams that we lead. That's when, as a business leader, you really do bring about change. And actually, not just taking the risk, but making sure that you support them. You know, as I look back in my first year on the RAC, we've put a former footballer onto our board, Joby McAnuff. Joby's made an exceptional contribution. You know, on the face of it, Joby had no board experience. But what Joby brings is an absolute detailed knowledge of football, first-hand knowledge of football and how it really works, rather than how some of us administrators think it works. He brings a great big dose of common sense, and he truly deeply understands people. So his contribution to our board isn't because he's got, you know, vast experience of being around a board, but he's shaped the agenda of our board. He's contributed substantially to our board. And to me, you know, that's probably one of the most valuable things I've done since I've been in this job.
Well, it's exactly goes to the heart of why diversity and inclusion at the boardroom matters, and how it can actually lead to better business, better results on and off the pitch. So that's sort of the mantra and the essence and the mission of SIGA's Good Governance Standards, is to ensure that there is diversity and inclusion. That's one of the aspects on the board of sports governing bodies. And last but certainly not least, and this is a personal question, which I'm sure many people will be interested in knowing, which female sports leaders inspire you most, Debbie? Because I can say that you certainly inspire me.
Wow, that's a deep question. Well, first, I'd have to say Sarina Wiegman. Serena's courage, clarity of her communication, and her resilience is absolutely amazing. You know, what she has brought to the leadership of our Lionesses is, well, quite simply extraordinary. And all of those qualities that I admire in any leader, she has in absolute spades. So Serena would definitely be one. Caught me on the hop now. I'd probably say actually Rebecca Welsh, who is our first female referee to referee a championship game, actually a men's championship game. And you know, I've spent a little bit of time actually with Rebecca. And you know what, when you think about leadership, you know, I sit in a boardroom, I have papers that I have time to consider, spreadsheets with detailed data. Rebecca has to run 100 yards at breakneck speed down a pitch. She has to make a call, a judgment, probably when she's only got 50% vision of what's happening, and she's got millions of people watching her on TV. To do that, to me, is true leadership. And to do that and have really, you know, the communication skills, the resilience that I've talked about, I find quite simply amazing. So yeah, she'd be one too. And I've got a special place in my heart for referees, given my history, and that's where I first fell in love with the game.
That's fantastic how it goes full circle. And I think that speed of decision, which actually, you know, on the business, you know, in the boardroom sometimes, and also on the pitch, you have to be ready to make that decision and be prepared to, as you said, take the risk to get it wrong. But it's all about having that insight and that intuition, which obviously in your career you develop and grow even more. On behalf of SIGA, Debbie, a big thank you for your insights today. We wish you the best of luck in the season and the year ahead at the FA. And just to say, you're SIGA wow.
Thank you.